So a just energy transition. Now, maybe a good place to start is by asking, what exactly do we mean by a just energy transition? I might turn to you, Anna, as someone who is a steward in your organization, is a steward of quite a lot of resources. Last I checked, $249 billion. You can correct me if that number is wrong, but a nice treasure chest, but one where you need to be responsible for those resources for the future. How do you think about just energy transition? What does it mean to you?
Yes, thank you. And the 250 billion global investments is correct, and that's on behalf of approximately 340,000 teachers based in Ontario. And one thing that's important to note, to level set, is that we're not your typical pension plan in that 80% of our assets are actually managed in-house, and approximately 62% of those are in private markets. So for us, climate change obviously presents an incredibly complex challenge as well as an opportunity. We believe that it's a generational investment opportunity, and as such, we're taking a learning approach where we're trying to be very respectful of the challenge that's ahead. And really, we have two convictions. So for us, one, climate change is a crisis that needs to be addressed urgently. It needs to be addressed now. And the second conviction is that the energy transition is inevitable, and it's also far-reaching. And so our approach is based on these convictions, where we have both a net zero target for 2050 with interim targets that we're well on our way to meet, as well as looking at different levers across our investment platform where we can contribute positively to the transition, such as investing in energy solutions, issuing green bonds, investing in transition assets, et cetera. Part of this for us is understanding that as we move towards investing in the transition, we will see increasing links with positive impact. And a hallmark of our approach is around maintaining credibility through measurable methodology.
Can you give any examples or case studies of how you've, let's say, modified your investment or stretched where you would go as you think about a just energy transition from what your organization might have done 20 years ago or 10 years ago?
Right, and I think probably a great place to start would be through our portfolio company example. So when it comes to the just transition, we're already seeing this being incorporated as a part of their core culture or their DNA. So of course, as an asset owner, incorporating social dimensions as part of the net zero transition planning is critical. It's been key for many of our portfolio companies to appreciate how the just transition can mean very different things depending on what asset class they're investing in or what geography. And so case in point example would be actually a local example, SSE, Scottish and Southern Electricity Networks, where they were actually one of the first of their kind to publish a just transition report in 2020. It's based on 5 principles ranging from the importance of green jobs to the importance of engaging community. And they are actually tracking over 20 of these principles over time to see how they're improving on progress as it relates to some of their just transition.
How do you keep them honest? We've talked a little bit about greenwashing already, the challenge of metrics, and we're not there yet. Here you are literally putting your money where your mouth is, investing in companies that are making some bold claims. When we can't even probably agree on a definition of just energy transition, how do you have confidence to invest in a company claiming to have a just energy transition strategy?
Right. Well, it always comes back to data, as one of the original speakers this morning was pointing to, and we have to maintain, again, credible approaches through methodology. So for us, we work with our portfolio companies on sustainability, risk, and opportunity throughout the entire investment cycle. So that includes transparency, reporting, disclosure, but also, again, this meaningful engagement that is a necessary piece of the just transition. So understanding that this is an evolving context, not one person or one firm has the responses. And so it has to be innovative and inclusive as we go.
Great, thank you. So that gets us off to a good start. Now we're going to come to a hard case, if I may say so. Michaela, I'm coming to you. Yeah. Your company, for those that don't know, you're a chief sustainability officer, but for a company that has a lot of coal, it's fair to say, right? That's integrated all the way back to the coal mine. And so this is a real challenge to talk about just energy transition when we talk about the most carbon intensive of fuels, of fossil fuels even, and one that can't really play a big part in a climate-friendly future, and one where we saw even challenges during the energy crisis of a couple of years ago, where you were called on to produce more from coal resources when the Russian gas was cut off for energy security reasons. So help us understand, in that challenging position you're in, what does just energy transition mean to you?
Okay, thank you. Just a brief idea of what we are doing. Vertically integrated, from more than 70% owned by state, and also we are public. Our shares are public. So, and we are in the phase out of closing our power plants, and hopefully we will close all of them within the 5 years. But we have to replace them by renewables, and we have to take care about all employees which are affected by closing these power plants. And also we have to deal with the communities around the power plants, with many of stakeholders, with our shareholders, which don't want to close power plants, and NGOs want to close power plants ASAP. So our perspective of just transition is to deal with all of these stakeholders and to address all their needs. So it's a very complex problem. I don't think we have enough time to go deeper.
Just give us a little bit more. I mean, that's a good background, because many people may not be familiar with your company. The challenge of switching from fossil-intensive resources to renewables, as you're doing, is not unique to Poland, right? Of course, South Africa faces a very, very difficult challenge. Many developing countries as well. And it has been a political issue. In Germany, for example, coal remains subsidized, we all know, famously or infamously, for many years. Even as they were handing out massive subsidies for solar, they continued to subsidize coal for political reasons, right? Right. And in the developing country context, out of the COP summits, there are these just energy transition partnerships where the G7 countries, World Bank, other international lenders are trying to help Indonesia, Vietnam, South Africa, and other countries try to bridge the gap on financing so that the communities, for example, where the miners are displaced, can find meaningful work and so on. But it's proving very difficult. In South Africa, it hasn't gone very well. To be blunt about it. We'll see how it goes in other countries. So this is a real challenge. I'm curious, in your context, are you getting additional resources from the government, or, because this is beyond the remit, even though you have a government stake, you're still a corporate entity, whereas this is a societal challenge.
We have both. We have some shareholders from a minority as a funds, for example, or another investors, and they want something different for us than, for example, government. So it's always like, I feel like dancing within the eggs sometimes. But what we think, we have to do our best for environment, for our, I think, for communities where we produce our electricity and power plants. So we balance somehow, and it's not. We have some funds from EU, but it's very difficult to take all the money, because we are the biggest company in Czech Republic. So we can't steal the money from somebody else, for example, small companies. So we have to earn our own money and to pay the just transition from our pocket.
From your pocket, right? You're dancing with eggs. That's an analogy that'll stick with us from this conference. So, okay, let's move on to our next speaker, and we'll come back to some of the themes that you're putting on the table, of course. Thibaud, I think you represent Uber. Yep. I think I'm fair in saying that most people in this audience not only know Uber, but probably taken Ubers. I hope so. Just a show of hands, how many of you have taken Uber in the past? All right, almost everyone. Keep your hands up. How many of you think Uber is an example of sustainability? Hands up. Okay, so I'm setting you up here. I know. It's a little unfair, but you did come to a sustainability conference.
I think
you're
fair.
the head of sustainability. And I say this as someone who loves Ubers. I take them all over the world. Fantastic. Even in Shanghai, when you guys came, you changed my life. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
Great service. So, and we've spoken before. So, but I do have
And you
some
challenge me
questions.
every time. I like it.
I have some questions for you. Can you make the case for how Uber is part of the sustainability solution?
Yeah,
And what are the
sure.
issues you grapple with?
Sure. Thank you for your constant pushes and challenges. We appreciate it. And, you talked about it a little bit, like if you want to be a leader in something, it's not going to be easy. So we appreciate this is hard. Look, there's nearly 6 million drivers on the platform. We operate in 70 countries. We've made a decision to be really bold on sustainability because we think it's mission critical. It's actually business critical, as I think some of the speakers before have said. Climate change is not going to go away. And yes, we have a moment right now with wars, with energy crises, high interest rates, etc. But that is going to go away. At least I'm optimistic by nature, so I think that's going to go away. Climate change is not going to go away, and it will remain at the top of the agenda of politicians and consumers. So for us as a business, we see sustainability as a way to attract consumers of today, like Gen Z today. We know that they're already making purchasing decisions based on whether or not a product is seen as green, but also future consumers. We also see risk, let's be honest, and I think some of you and some of the previous speakers have talked about it. We see this as a way to de-risk the business. There's going to be increasing regulatory pressure on companies like us to comply with a lot of standards. If we don't start investing early and a lot, we're just not going to be able to be future-proof. So we want to be a leader, and we want to be the cleanest platform on earth.
What are you doing about it?
And so, yeah, I was coming to that. Like, what we've done about it is we've set some really ambitious targets. We want to be, for the mobility side of our business, zero emissions in US, Canada, and Europe by 2030, and across the platform by 2040. We've decided to invest $800 million in different forms of incentives for drivers to get discounts on cars, for example. So in a place like London, if you drive on the platform, you can accumulate funds and you can get up to £10,000 towards buying an electric car. We went from a few hundred...
zero emission vehicles, that's
zero
part of your...
vehicles.
And
so
mostly it's EVs at the moment. But
it's mostly EVs, yeah. Right. And we've gone from a few hundreds of EVs on the platform to 125,000 vehicles today. And we want to sort of go to 100% in all of those cities by 2030. And in some European capitals, we want to be 50% electric, zero emissions by 2025. So that's what we're doing about it. We're investing, setting ambitious targets. We're also disclosing our progress, as I think we were saying earlier. Companies disclosing their progress towards their targets is really important to create the confidence with investors. We think that for some investors, climate is becoming really important. We get an increasing number of investors that are asking us about our TCFD rating, about whether our targets are SBTi approved. So we have all of that, and we're also publishing our progress.
You are SBTi.
Our targets are SBTi approved,
okay.
And we've got a B rating on TCFD. Which is a few years ago when you challenged me, we were a D, so now we're a B. So we're getting there. So that's what we're doing about it. But what we're seeing is that there are a number of obstacles that Uber alone cannot address. Climate, we like to say climate is a team sport, and we can invest a lot of our money, dilute some of our margins. But what we need right now is to tackle two obstacles in this transition for it to be just. The first thing is EVs are still not as affordable so electric cars are still not as affordable as gas-powered cars. There's still a gap. It depends by country, et cetera.
Right.
What we need is governments to really signal that they're going to end gas-powered cars at some point. A country like Norway has said that by 2025, they will ban all gas-powered cars.
Sure.
That's a great example. We're not asking everyone to be like Norway, but it's certainly inspirational. We need incentives and subsidies by governments to help us. We're also putting our own dollars in there, euros and pounds, but we also need governments to incentivize the transition to electric cars by giving them subsidies to acquire an EV. And then the other thing that we're hearing from all drivers, which makes the transition at the moment not being fully just, is that a lot of drivers live in neighborhoods where they don't have access to charging.
Right.
And so we need grid companies, we need energy companies, cities to work together, and charging operators to make chargers available in areas where high mileage drivers live, because drivers on Uber and high mileage drivers in general, they bring you 4 times the benefit. When they move to electric cars, they bring you 4 times the benefit that you and me moving to an electric car bring, because they drive much more.
Sure.
And so
the petrol replaced is the thing to watch, right?
Exactly. And so if we focus on them, if we focus on the neighborhoods where they live, it's going to deliver an outsized impact for every dollar invested. And so we really encourage all of our stakeholders, automakers, governments, municipalities to have more affordable models, incentivize, subsidize the acquisition of these models, and then making charging more accessible and more affordable.
What are you finding from consumers? I noticed the Uber Green tab appears on my app.
Yeah, great.
But sometimes they're just hybrids that are running on petrol. Sometimes they're beat up old cars. It's not a great consumer experience, I have to tell you, at least in New York City where I live. But generally speaking, the pricing is at a premium, I've noticed. What is the general response from your customer base? Are they willing to pay a premium? Are they appreciative of this product, or is it something that's a work in progress?
So that's what you're talking about in terms of you have to pay a premium to get a greener product on our app. Is something that we've changed our global approach on, and now we're trying to have a global approach where in every city, if you have a more sustainable product, which is hybrids and EVs, you're going to pay the same price. And in some cases, like in Paris, you're paying a little bit less. That's something we're going to try and hold on to, because we think that indeed at the moment, consumers are probably not willing to pay a price premium on a more sustainable product. What we see, though, is that they are willing, from our research, they are willing to pay a time premium. So if you have to wait a little bit for your greener car to show up, a number of consumer segments are actually willing to pay for that with time. Right. They'll be like, I'm going to wait for my green car a little bit more, but that's fine because I want to get into a green car. And what we're increasingly seeing from Gen Z and younger segments of our riders in general, we've got like close to 200 million riders around the world, is that they're starting to actually say, I'm going to make a purchasing decision based on whether or not the product is green. So the trade-off for us is, well, first we have to have them at the same price, but if we don't have that greener product, which to address your concern will be increasingly EV only, but that will take a while. For now, we need hybrids as well. We need them to be at the same price, and we need them to come as soon as possible. But consumers are still willing to make that trade-off with time at the moment. So. There's that we can feel that this is evolving, and definitely not going. Like I said, the climate change challenge is not going away. If anything, the consumers of today are probably going to be sort of way more represented tomorrow. So when the inflation, high interest rate, inflation, cost of crisis is gone, we expect that to be even more prevalent among riders.
I can see they're keeping you busy over there. So thank you for filling us in on some of the progress. Duncan.
Welcome.
You have a little bit of an easier ride on the just energy transition since the product you make, I think, is one that may be more readily acknowledged to be part of sustainability. But even then, there are challenges. Can you tell us a little bit about your perspective from Ørsted and how you see wind fitting in, and what might be the challenges you'd like to take on?
Yeah, thank you. And maybe it hasn't always felt easy.
Well, especially with interest rates the way they are now, I know there have been some setbacks as well from financial markets.
Yeah, I mean, we come at this from the perspective that a just energy transition is one that we pursue as fast as we can and as fully as we can, because the counterfactual is something that is insanely unjust. And I guess as a company, we come at this from a point of view that we reached a realization more than 10 years ago that actually our future, our business opportunity, our growth was not going to exist without a pivot to sustainability. And that's the pivot we've made. We've transformed ourselves from a heavily fossil utility to one entirely focused on green solutions, on green production, green primary production, a world leader in offshore wind. So for us, this transition is about changing the technologies which we get our energy and doing that as fast as possible. It means that the new energy infrastructure is in slightly different places and it's a different character than the old energy infrastructure. That means we have to work with those communities that are going to be hosting that infrastructure. It's incredibly important to get the jobs and the skills that we need to deliver this, and that means working with the energy industry as it is. Many of our colleagues are moving from the legacy energy systems, the coal, the oil and gas, and we need to train and upskill the workforces. We need to work with the communities that we work. We need to address all the stakeholders that are part of the new picture, whether those are, in the case of offshore wind, the fishing communities. In the case of offshore wind again, the onshore communities that will be hosting the new grid infrastructure that brings that energy to where the demand is. And we have to bring those communities with us as part of the transition. And in doing that, it's a job we have to do hand in hand with governments.
Can we focus on that just a little bit? Because we spoke about this yesterday in a couple of different panels. There is a significant NIMBY problem that renewables face. Onshore wind more so than offshore, but as we all know, in offshore, the Kennedys don't like their view obstructed, right? Infamously, and have blocked wind projects despite their liberal tendencies. And so there can be NIMBYism offshore as well. Other than talking about bringing the communities along, what actually works? What has worked in your experience as a global company now in getting communities on board that might have been suspicious or reluctant or hostile? Is it tangibly showing them benefits, free power for a decade? I mean, how extreme does one need to go?
That's definitely part of it. I think working with those communities, understanding them, it's a long game, engaging over time, being in those communities and part of it. And we've got excellent examples where the right thing has been, if you like, investment in that community, local jobs. We've got examples where we establish community benefit funds, which are then an important part of upgrading local community experiences. And in the example of Grimsby in the north of England, around the Humber, there was a community that's been through its own transition, a transition where the fishing industry on which it depended, disappeared almost overnight. And so you have a deprived coastal community for which the new energy solutions are an absolute opportunity, an opportunity for regenerating a community and saving a community both through employment, economic engagement more generally, and infrastructure investment. So, this is more about opportunity.
No, we do the same thing
in
Czech Republic. We do the same thing to work inclusively with these communities, to hear their voice, and they have to be the part of the discussion and to have a possibility to be within the decision. So to involve them. This is the what we can do, and I think it works.
It has. You've seen some success with it, have you?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I appreciate what Duncan's using as an example there. And so a few things that we know of is, consideration of just transition in terms of a risk mitigation lens, as well as a value creation lens, and then the importance of engaging with the community. And I think one case in point example that we've seen is with Mahindra, one of our portfolio companies based in India. They're a renewables energy platform, and they've actually set up a training center of excellence to help onboard over now 10,000 technicians for the renewable energies sector. So that's a very strong example that we've been very impressed by. That I think
so education, skilling, job opportunities are part of that justice component of the transition.
Absolutely, and viewing reskilling as truly a competitive advantage if used properly.
Right, that's great. I want to come to the audience in just a moment, so get your questions ready, but I think you wanted to jump in, Thibaud.
Yeah, I was just going to add that it's also very much true for the population of Uber drivers, like the quality and availability of information to help them make the transition to electric cars, for example, because it's such a big investment. Like investing in a car is the second most expensive asset for most households. Sure. The way we as Uber provide the right amount of information in the app, the way we tell them where they can charge at the right time, at the right price, etc. All of these contributes to the, I would call this upskilling, because it's giving them the right information at the right time, but also some skills around like building, the mathematics around, I'm going to make this transition, etc. I totally agree that this is something that companies in general need to do, and tech allows you to go straight to the consumer in the case of the consumer business. And so we're using all of these communications channels to upskill the workforce, I think is tremendously important.
Okay, great. Let's go to the audience. Let's see a hand right here, lady on this aisle.
Thank you. My name is Christina Skybova. I'm coming from the Centre for Synchronous Leadership. My question is directly to Michaela, actually. I'm a fellow Eastern European, your neighbour in Slovakia. And I wondered what your view is on bringing along some of the older generations within our region to bring them onto the sustainability agenda more so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that question.
Thank you. We can bring the microphone to the front row for the next question, but please, you can answer.
Very quickly, it's about the new technologies, innovations, about the new opportunities, what to do in our sector, about new technologies, for example, in products which are bringing the savings for customers, and it's about the AI, for example, and implementing all these things. And this is something which is very, I think we attract through these things the new generation and the young people. So it's not about the old coal and about the it's about new things, renewables, nuclear as well. I think this is very interesting for new generation and for our technical students, and we offer many jobs in nuclear and in small nuclear reactors as well. So new technologies and innovations.
Here in the front row, we have a question. Please identify yourself, sir.
Hi, I'm Shiba Baumek, coming from California in the US, and great job moderating the sessions, learning a lot. I have a particular question with respect to electric vehicles for fleet operations, and something that you already touched on. Going back to the experience that you talked about, like in Norway, I think, we need to acknowledge that the experience in Norway need not be replicated globally, particularly because, it has to do with the energy mix of the electrical system. As a case in point, the US energy mix doesn't have that amount of hydroelectricity, so you may not be driving on clean energy. So with that in the context, with respect to the experience in Norway versus the US, where do you see how you're going to make it more affordable and equitable with respect to for anybody to take a Uber ride when electricity prices in California are going through the roof?
Yeah, very good question. I think the energy mix for charging cars is really important. First, because if you have a lot of EVs on the Uber platform, but they're being charged through coal plants, no disrespect, obviously you're not exactly helping the environment. So that's something that we're closely watching. Obviously, it's not our business. What we can do is partner with grid operators to incentivize them to move to a greener mix. In terms of the price, this is something that we're hearing from drivers more and more. Here in London, for example, the price to charge on fast chargers has gone from a few pence a kilowatt to sometimes up to 70, 80 pence a kilowatt, which is obviously way more expensive and sometimes on par with what it would be for them to use a gas-powered car. So what we can do about that is continue to work with more operators. So what we're doing in the UK is to create competition. We're doing deals with BP Pulse, and we want to do deals with others so that the competition between them to attract drivers to their charging points will drive the price down. And second is to continue to work with governments to make sure that they have pricing regulation mechanisms for low-income households or for high-mileage drivers, like commercial drivers, to protect them from these price changes, which I think are fair if they're market-based, but as a business operating as a driver on the Uber platform, you need some kind of guarantees. So in some countries, what we're seeing is that some governments will target specific populations of professionals, giving them price guarantees and sort of lock in prices for 1 or 2 years. So these are the things we are doing. There's certainly more we can do, but as Uber, this is what we think we can do.
Michaela, you had a quick comment to follow on.
We can do something together. I offer you cooperation in Czech Republic because we are producer of the electricity and we build charging spots as well. So
that's perfect.
Well, there you go. Deals are being made. The future is being built here on the Economist stage. That's what I like to see. I have just a little bit of time. A short question and a short answer from the stage. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Ivor Tucker. I run a company called Generation C, which is about connecting the decarbonisation and climate stories of the business community with schools and school kids, so they get to understand the range of future green careers and the opportunities for them. So specifically for Duncan, you're talking about skills and training, which I presume is primarily to people entering the workforce or currently in your workforce. But what are you doing to connect with the next generation of kids to explain to them the vast range of jobs that will exist in the renewable energy business?
Yeah, it is actually both. It's both at career entry, but it's also at career conversion as well. And you know, we equally have programs across both. You know, one of things I'm proud of is our apprenticeship program, engaging with people right at the start of their career, maybe school leaver stage, and bringing in, you know, as rich and diverse a new cohorts as we possibly can, developing new programs, combining education and on the job training. We go out and engage in the communities local to where our business is working. So here in the UK, that includes both our east and west coasts. So up in Barrow in the west on the Irish Sea, you know, we're a big part of that local community. We know the schools in the region. We do exactly the same in the east around Grimsby and our east coast hub there. And it works at different age groups as well. So we find it's really important to engage through that school journey and you know, make information and opportunity visible to teachers, parents, and children through those different stages where decisions get made and people's interest gets sparked.
So children are the future, as the great philosopher Whitney Houston once said. That brings us to a close for this panel. Please give them a nice round of applause. Thank you. And please, if I may invite you.